Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called Retreat Hell, Ch.7.5, written by a Lithy Dragon. Tyrael woke well into the next morning, not daring to venture out into the light of day. He sheltered in the trees for a time, regaining his strength. The trees were alien to him. They were of no species known to Gala. They were completely wild. I'm not sure if they can even sense me, he shrugged. In time, they will. When darkness fell, he stepped past the human patrols and moved away from the portal. Lights illuminated the horizon to the south and west, signs of heavy population. He was not ready to venture into human population centers. The great highway bounded him to the east. Carriages rampaged up and down it, even in the dead of night, and the bridge across too open and illuminated and patrolled by human soldiers. Slipping into the trees and scrubland, he began wandering his way north, seeking a more isolated regions. To conserve mana, he avoided dwelling on clusters of habitation and blended through the shadows only when he couldn't. As dawn neared, he crossed into a low mountains of the north, the sheltering in another grove of trees. He rested and awaited the darkness once more. I must take no chances. He continued the next evening, winding his way through the mountains, skirting past clusters of homes, sometimes following roads, sometimes slipping across country. He stopped periodically as he moved further from the portal, to measure their ambient mana levels. To his relief, he found that the ethereal mana was in much abundance in this world as it had been on Gala. If there is any difference, I lack the artifacts necessary to detect it. As dawn approached, he doubled back south, climbing a ridge to gain an everlasting viewpoint. Cresting a peak, he found what he was looking for. A house. Isolated. Alone. It would be considered a manor by the standards of the Kishmen, and was large even for what Tyrael was used to of our homeland. We are rarely afforded such space. A carriage sat on the paved lot in front of the two doors sized for it, attached to the house like some small stable. If the stable's full, or is the carriage left ready to depart? He crept up to the edge of the open yard that surrounded the house. Two small structures stood in the yard of what was clearly the back of the house. One was made of wood, with several climbing bars, two swing sets, and a larger platform with a slide. The smaller structure was made from an unfamiliar multicolored material, and resembled a miniature horse. As he crept through the scrub and the trees and the border of the yard, something inside barked. Tyrael froze, blending into the trees. The sun was up, but he had seen no sign of activity in the manor until now. Another bark. Whatever creature is making the noise is not small. He heard several more barks, moving through the house. The sound carries, but not far enough. Maintaining his blending, he slipped into the yard and crept up to cover behind the miniature house. Lights were coming on inside the manor now, and the barking continued. Perhaps this creature was trained to wake its masters with the dawn. The barking moved to the rear of the house. Curtains moved inside, and the glass door slid open. A pale, gold-colored animal surged out, practically dragging the human man who held it on a leash with it. The man wore loose, bagging pants and a light shirt underneath a soft robe and hung open, its sash left undone. His brown hair was askew, and he looked barely conscious. "Wharf!" the creature barked. "Wharf, wharf, wharf!" It looked like a stocky, primitive Kishman, he mused. It's just missing the horns, and the ears are wrong. "Come on, Lila, you're not going after squirrels today," the man said, tugging the rein in the animal. "Settle down and do your business. It's too damn early for this." "Wharf, wharf, wharf!" The creature strained on its master's leash, looking straight at Tyrael. "It knows I'm here." Tyrael stood up. The creature lowered its head and growled, hackles up. The man looked at his animal, sleep fading rapidly. "What's got?" Tyrael released his blend. "Oh crap!" The human wan's last words, with the pulsing shriek discharging mana. Tyrael shot a short burst from his staff into the human's chest, knocking him to the ground in a spray of blood. Its leash suddenly released. The creature charged forward. "Roar, roar, roar, roar!" Another short burst cut it short of a yelp. The creature's lifeless body tumbled to the ground. "Dad!" he heard a voice call from inside. Tyrael slipped into the open door and stepped inside. He came almost face to face with another human, short, lanky, with a mop of sandy hair. a young male. The child only had enough time to give him a confused look before he lowered his staff and put a pulse of raw mana into his chest. Less than a foot from the mana gem on the crest of the staff, the pulse punched clean through the youth's chest, spraying blood, bone, and bits of lungs across the carpeted room. There was an anguished scream from across the room. Tyrael looked up. The mother. She stood at the foot of the staircase, staring in horror at her son's corpse. "Mommy!" He heard another voice call. "Sarah! Run!" The woman shrieked, turning and bolting up the stairs. Tyrael drew his sword, the mana gem on the pommel glowing as he sent a pulse of energy into it, igniting the blade in orange mana. He followed. Rounding the corner on the top of the stairs, he was met with a shriek of agonized rage as the woman charged at him, swinging a metal club. He casually deflected it with a shield pulse from his staff, the club bouncing off of the loud ping, then ran her through with his glowing blade. Her momentum carried her to the hilt. The scent of searing flesh filled his nostrils. He met her gaze. Her sky-blue eyes were filled with terror, anguish, rage, and despair. Such a powerful mix of emotions, he thought, as he twisted the blade. She choked, her mouth moving wordlessly as she dropped the club. He flicked the blade sideways, cutting her heart in two as his sword sliced up her chest. Her blonde hair fanning out, she fell to the ground, twitching her last as Tyrael stepped over her. The elf stalked forward. The door was left ajar. Pushing it open, he saw a large bed, unmade. Chests of drawers lined the picture and oddities. A vanity. The parents' room, he thought. Pulling the door shut, he continued. The next door on his right was open. The room was tiled instead of a carpet that covered the rest of the floors. It contained what was clearly a bathtub built into one wall, and a bowl with a seat on the lid. A bath and a privy on the second floor. They must have at least had basic indoor plumbing. With no places to hide in the privy room, Tyrael left the door open. The next door was the right with a linen closet. The floor creaked beneath his feet as he calmly walked down the hall, the only sound in the house. The last door on the right was also ajar. It had a single bed, also unmade, and a desk and a dresser covered with more oddities. Toys and strange devices were scattered about the room, along with several items of clothing that looked about the right size for a boy. Drawing the door shut, Tyrael turned the last door on the left. This one was shut. A sheet of paper was tacked to the door, covered in a multicolored wax drawing. It looked like there were crude words as well, but he couldn't read them. Leaning his staff against the wall, Tyrael tried to open the door. It was locked. He placed the point of his sword against the door, next to the frame, and even with the handle. He increased the trickle of energy into the blade. He pressed it forward, letting the halo of the charged mana do most of the work. Slowly, the blade slipped into the door, flames spitting and flaring as the wood charred and ignited. Once his sword was plunged halfway through the door, he withdrew it, and he picked up his staff. With a flick, he snuffed out the flames and then kicked the door open. He banged against the wall, and he stepped into the room. This one contained another bed, also unmade, a dresser, a small vanity, a chest, and an assortment of toys and other childish sundries. He stepped around the bed, quietly scanning the room. It was empty. His ears twitched, a hint of noise. He tilted his head to angle them better, a faint snuffling. He turned to set of white slatted doors. In here! Another closet. Stepping over the doors, he extinguished the mana charge of the blade and used the tip to drag the double-hinged doors open. There she is. Huddled against the back of the closet, holding a stuffed animal to her chest, sat a little girl. Her dusty locks were darker than her mother's, but she had the same sky-blue eyes. Sniffling, she looked up at him with her sad, fearful eyes, clutching her stuffed animal tiger. Staring into those pale blue orbs, Tyrael was struck by a bout of mercy. She's too innocent for pain. He lowered his staff and sent a raw mana blast into her head, spraying blood and brains across the closet. Sheathing his sword, he turned away. Tyrael walked back outside and collected the body of the father, dragging him back inside, shutting and locking the sliding doors behind him. Emperor's bones, they're heavy, he thought as he struggled to drag the man's body up the stairs. Do they eat rocks? An exhaustive struggle later, Tyrael managed to drag all the bodies into the last room at the end of the hall, piling them all into the closet. The slatted doors wouldn't shut anymore. It wasn't that large of a closet, but at least the bodies were all out of sight and out of his way. He shut the broken door on his way out. Downstairs, the first room he entered, there was a set of couches and chairs arranged around a strange black panel, obviously of some importance. Tyrael spent 20 minutes investigating it before he found the rectangular artifact covered in buttons sitting next to a large reclining chair. There are symbols on the artifact that match the large panel device. Examine it more closely. One end has a smooth, dark-colored material embedded in it, and it's curved to fit the end of pointing away from you. He shrugged and began methodically pressing buttons. The second button caused the device to flare to life. Light and noise filled the room as moving pictures appeared on the panel. A few more experiments with the controlling artifact, and he discovered the device could be tuned to pick up different streams. This is perfect, he thought. Far better than I could have hoped. He flicked from stream to stream and began to learn. End of chapter. Retreat Hell, Declaration of War. Written by a Lithy Dragon. Senators and representatives, I have a distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States. The chamber, full of bleary-eyed congressmen and women, aides, reporters, and observers, stood and applauded as President Richards walked into the room. The applause was less enthusiastic than it might otherwise have been. The retired Navy officer had managed to navigate the rising tide of partisan hostility by ignoring it entirely, and had the distinction of being the only candidate in his election year to not be despised by any particular group. As such, while he held no camp of feverish support, he had largely been deemed, with some reluctance, as acceptable, even by his opposition. The lack of enthusiasm was not due to any distaste or displeasure for the Republican president, but rather due to the hour. The special joint session of the 116th Congress had been called just past 11 at night, with most of the senators and representatives arriving and the session formally starting a little over an hour later. They would continue to wait for another hour, though that did allow time for most of the remaining senators and representatives to arrive. Only those few who had not been near the Capitol when the session had been called were not in attendance. President Richards ascended to the podium of the House floor, motioning for the Speaker to cut the listless applause short. She banged her gavel once she had turned to face the podium, and the applause fell silent. Two more members of Congress slipped inside the chamber and quietly found seats in the back. He placed a notepad on the podium before him, and with a frown, he closed his eyes for a moment with a heavy sigh. But when he opened them, his shoulders were square, his spine was straight and steel-rod, and his expression was firm. Mr. Vice President, Madam Speaker, members of the Senate, and the House of Representatives. He glanced down at his notes and set them aside. It is with great reluctance that I come before you this evening, but I'm afraid that I must share with you some grave news. Not 12 hours ago, we sent a delegation through the San Diego portal to meet with the so-called Asimni Empire to discuss peace and neutrality between our two nations. They were directed to assure the leaders of the Empire that we had no interest in becoming involved in their conflict with the Kingdom of Ganlan, that we bore no ill will to the Elven people, and that we sought only peaceful relations with both of our new neighbors. The President glanced at his watch. He looked around the chamber at the elected officials before him. It is with my deepest regret that I must inform you that 4 hours ago our delegation was returned to us. His grey eyes hardened, his expression turning to steel. The 12 men and women that we sent to the emissaries of peace were returned to us cut into tiny pieces and packed inside 5 elaborately decorated boxes. He paused as a wave of shock rippled through the assembly. The Speaker banged her gavel once more, and he continued with the commotion had died down. With those boxes were delivered a message. He placed a note on pad in front of him again, reading from it. It translates as follows. We do not hold relations with animals. The inferior will be expunged to their proper place, or expunged from existence. President Richards set the note aside again, and silence reigned over the chamber. Senators and representatives, I must further inform you that less than an hour ago I was given a report from a reconnaissance assets that we've sent through the portal. Not only have they confirmed the size and numbers of both armies that we were given by the Gandan delegation, They have also observed signs of a large elven force moving to reinforce their existing army, which has begun to mobilize towards the Gandalf army at the portal. He looked at the chamber. At this time, an army that numbers upwards of 40,000 troops is marching in the direction of San Diego, with tens of thousands more moving to reinforce them. From the Gandalf accounts of their respective capabilities, the nearly 50,000 Gandalf troops that stand between the elves and the portal will not be able to hold back without reinforced elven army. Senators and representatives, we are faced with an implacable enemy, unlike any that we have faced in recent memory. An enemy who has made their desires and intentions unequivocally clear. We have not faced such an assemblage since the Korean War. We have not faced such a malevolent enemy since the Second World War. We have not faced such a direct threat to the American soil from a foreign adversary since the War of 1812. As the Commander-in-Chief of the American military, I have directed every measure to be taken to ensure our defenses. As we speak, the men and women of our armed forces are moving to defend our soil, to protect our citizens, and to stand against this threat. I have full faith and confidence in the courage, determination, and capability of our armed forces to confront this evil, and to carry us through to victory. He paused as a wave of applause rippled through the chamber. Make no mistake, he said, as when the applause quietened down, it is evil that we face, an evil that threatens not our treasure, not our livestock, but that what we see as reduced to animals, or wiped from existence. He looked around the silence that was once more reigned. There are few who are alive today who remember, but we have faced such an evil before. Those who were called to defend in the world against an evil are considered our greatest generation. Today, we are called again. A new evil has arisen, and it is now our generation's turn to stand against it, and to show the unyielding and righteous character of the American people. Another wave of applause erupted across the chamber. There was nothing tepid or lackluster about it this time. He waited until it subsided. I ask Congress to declare that, in light of this unmistakable acts of hostility and aggression, the state of war now exists between the United States and the Elven Empire. Applause thundered around the chamber as he yielded the floor and allowed Congress to carry out the proceedings. The matter was quickly brought to a vote. It passed the Senate 84-0. When the roll call was complete, it passed the House 392-2, one abstention, and at 01:33 on the 9th of June in the year 2020, the United States of America declared war on the Icemni Empire. End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the link down below. Otherwise, if you wish to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, like liking, subscribing, and possibly even becoming a patron. Otherwise, the easiest way would be to share. And until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.